Welcome back to episode 6. Thank you to those that have joined us before for previous episodes. If this is your first time, welcome. We're excited you're here. Before we dive in, go to the link and tell us about yourself or a teacher friend that we should highlight. Maybe there's things like special lessons, classroom hacks, working with special populations, classroom management, parent communications, organizational systems, spell work, technology, collaboration, working with administrators, buzzwords, and anything else that you can come up with. Basically, the microphone is yours. Tell us about the things you want to hear about so that we can get that microphone to the right person. Welcome back. I feel like it's been a while.
I know. I feel like it has too, but maybe not by the time we actually publish this.
I know. You know what I'm excited about? We have our first teacher.
I know. I feel like we've been building up to this whole time, and it's here, and I'm really jazzed.
All right. Welcome, Amanda. How are you doing?
Yay, I am great. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you guys so much for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you.
Very
you have
excited.
a lot of really cool stuff to share with us and share with everybody else. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started with the first question. I guess a lot of people are probably wanting to know your current position and how you got here. Tell us your story of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a 5th grade math and science teacher at Rosewood Elementary, which is in Broken Arrow. And Rosewood Elementary opened in 2020. And so that's when I came to this site from a different building. I was actually a math interventionist at a different site in Broken Arrow, and I loved that job so much. But I really just kind of felt the call back into the classroom. I had sort of felt for the last few years in that role like, I don't think I have the classroom out of me yet kind of thing.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, me too.
And so I needed to be back in a classroom, and it just seemed like a right time for a switch to open a new building. Sounded so fun. Sorry, hang on.
Call the office, Mr. Gear. Please call 6300 6300 6300. Thank you.
Okay, I think we should leave that in because it's the real world.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
real.
very much on brand for education that you get interrupted by an announcement.
That's so fun. Anyway, yes, so I just felt the call back into the classroom, and at the time came back to teaching just a self-contained classroom and did that for 2 years. And then our team really was pushing for departmentalized. And so since I had taught math, was a math interventionist, all those years, I spent about 9 years in a math interventionist role. And that role really, oh man, it is really why I am the math teacher I am today, because I had the capacity and passion just to dive into so much in that role, research and articles, and I did so much in that role that really has bled over into how I feel about math, what I know about teaching math, what I know is good for kids. So yeah, here I am.
So when we did our first conversation, you have those posters behind you that caught my attention. Go ahead and tell us about them. What are those mindsets and kind of how did you create them? How did they come about? How do you teach your students all of those things? Tell us all about them.
Absolutely. So yeah, in that first conversation, you were asking me about our math mindset posters, which are posted at the front of our classroom. They are 10 math mindsets. And so when I began teaching math and science departmentalized, I really got to go back to my roots of what is good instruction for kids. And I had done a lot of research when Common Core first came to Oklahoma because I was an interventionist at the time, and part of my role was professional development. And so I really dug into why and how with the Common Core standards, and part of that were the mathematical practices. And for me, that really sort of was this is what math looks like in a classroom. It's not just a standard here or a skill there. It is like the thinking that goes along with the math. But then when we went and did Oklahoma academic standards, we have our math actions and processes. So it sort of became this blended idea of what do good mathematicians do is really the heart of it. I remember coming back to doing self-contained, and that was some language with readers. What do good readers do? Good readers visualize when they read. Good readers read in context. Well, the same thing applies with math. What do mathematicians do? What are the habits or mindsets of good mathematicians? So I really took those Common Core math standards, mathematical standards with the MAPS, the math actions and processes, and kind of blended them together in kid-friendly language that really could be things that students could see themselves doing in the classroom. So I'll give you, I won't list all 10 of them out. I did provide you with the posters, so you're welcome to link those in and
Yep, they're
include
going to be
them as
linked
a
below for
resource.
sure.
Perfect. But some of I do have some favorites because they are, invasive in our classroom. But we recognize that there are many ways to solve problems. That ties really nicely with some of the Common Core standards. We can explain our thinking. That one is reason abstractly and quantitatively. So kids know we can explain our thinking. That's kid language. We notice and use patterns. Math is nothing but patterns, right? So giving them that language of like, what are we doing right now? Oh, we're using this pattern, and then Math Mindset 4, we use what we know to find what we don't know. So this idea of, I don't know how to solve this. Well, what part do you know? So always being on the lookout for what I do know in a problem to get me to what I don't know. Anyway, so those are just some of the highlights. But I think it's like a thread that just weaves through every facet of mathematics. It doesn't matter what skill, what standard, what big rock in math that you're working on. The math mindsets are really just what good mathematicians do as they're processing math thinking. And so, that's kind of how they came about in our classroom.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You have me thinking. So this week I've been diving into the literature on what do we know about the Common Core standards related to the Standards for Math Practice and also the Oklahoma math actions and processes. And I'm wondering, I was reading this article and Raymond and Reader found that teachers kind of felt unsupported to implement those math actions and processes after we switched from Common Core to this new version in Oklahoma. These are really important in your classroom, but I'm wondering, did you get training on these? Is this something that you just started taking up? How did you get to, these are part of my classroom every single day?
Yeah. So first, no, I didn't get any training necessarily. Our district provides great professional development, but not specifically for this. I think it was really a blend of what I had learned as an interventionist, resources that I had come across, and I'll throw out a couple of those resources that were really inspirational for me. ucubed.org by Joe Bowler out of Stanford University. So that her week of inspiration was actually really inspirational to me, and everything on her website really, including her book, which the title is Leaving Me at This Moment.
Her Mathematical Mindsets book?
Thank you. Mathematical Mindset.
It's great.
So
would recommend.
Yes.
Yep.
Hands down.
100%.
Yeah.
So you kind of like that math mindsets language even is just from like things that I put together from like, oh, I read that book. This really kind of ties in with that as well. And so what happened was as I was developing these, I thought, in math to set up our classroom and what our class is going to be like, I've got to start it at the beginning of the year on day one. What are we doing in math? Well, I don't want to give them a multiplication quiz the first day that they're coming in here. That's to me not the most important thing in math. What is the most important thing in math? Incorporating children's literature, looking for connections, making it fun, making it inviting. And so what I ended up doing was like developing over time, and I would tell you it's still a work in progress, honestly, but it's sort of like maybe some teachers would call it like a 0 unit, where we are setting up our math class and the math mindsets. So I'm beginning to develop these lessons that really teach the math mindsets, not in isolation necessarily, because I could do the math mindsets. I could pull those out, any of them in almost any lesson, because it's not like a standard there. It's that thread that weaves through math. So one of my favorites, and I actually linked it in as well, for you guys, is the book Minnie's Diner. It is the funnest book to read in class, especially at the beginning of the year when you want your kids to know, like, this is so fun and I'm going to make it really fun for you too. So the story is the sweetest, funnest story because the book rhymes. So when I'm trying to get kids to notice and use patterns, I can read this story and then I can just say, did you notice any patterns in this book? And they'll notice, oh, Miss Bowser, it was a rhyming story. Oh, great, that's a pattern, But it's also, the story is about these boys working on the farm, and they get a waft from Minnie's Diner, and they're hungry, and so they show up at the door of the diner. Well, every time the brother shows up twice as big as his brother before. And so then it goes through what they order. Well, every time they're ordering twice as much. And so you're getting them into, how much did he order? How much, and so by the end of it, it's like they love Minnie's Diner. And so then I can take that to a task where we're using patterns. What pattern did you notice? Can you extend this pattern? So that's just one example of how I sort of introduce the math mindsets. I kind of have a lesson or something that I do that goes with each of them. And then as we get into more of our standards and more of our curriculum, I just really incorporate it, especially at the beginning every day when we are closing that lesson, or it could be at the start of the lesson, depending on what it is, talking about, hey, which math mindset really stood out today? Which one did we were using that one a lot as a mathematical thinker, as we're thinking on, whatever number sense routine we might be doing. Were you noticing patterns? Or it could be that I want to highlight one. So I might say, today we're going to really focus on math mindset number 2. We can explain our thinking. And so I'll model what that might look like. And then if I hear really good explaining going on, then I highlight, wow, did you hear how he explained his thinking? Mathematicians, that's one of the habits or mindsets of a mathematician, is that they explain how they're solving these problems. And so it just becomes that thread that weaves through every lesson that we do. And now we're at the point in the school year, it's fun because I can say afterwards, hey, what math mindset did you notice yourself using today? And I'll give them a minute to reflect, and they'll share out. And it's amazing the things that they come up with, because it's not just, oh, I used math mindset number 6. We attend to precision. I can say, well, explain, how did you use that? Well, Miss Bowser, I had to really make sure when I'm adding and subtracting with decimals, I have to make sure I notice place value, because if I don't, then I'm going to get the wrong answer. So the way that they're able to articulate, it's just neat to watch them really sew that thread through all of the math that we're doing.
Do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I love that you make it explicit. Like, I feel like a lot of times as teachers, we just put it on the board or on the wall. We have our nice, pretty poster, and every once in a while we'll refer to it. But I love how you bring it out as part of like your everyday conversation. And you're really explicit about it at the beginning. And as you mentioned, like, now it's just more natural to the students. I'm kind of curious what happens when they leave your classroom or before they get to you. Like, what are other teachers around you doing?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this, because I find so much power in the math mindsets that this is one of the things where I sometimes feel crippled or like, oh gosh, that's so outside of my control. My hope is that it gets carried on, but knowing like this isn't, this is not out there right now for everybody to use. It's not even something in our building. I wish I could tell you like, man, in my building, everybody's doing this. It starts at kindergarten. Like, that's my dream. Okay.
Right.
That is my pipe dream right there, because I see the power in when we, like you said, are explicit in the language and can name for kids what they're doing. Wow, you noticed that pattern. Wow, you explained your thinking. Wow, you persevered while problem solving. Oh, look, we're using a model to help us solve this problem. I just see the power in it. And so I think without that piece, when it is not explicit, it's sort of like all of these skills hanging in isolation rather than sort of like a beautiful melting pot of ideas that there's like this common thread. I keep using that term because it's just the analogy that comes to me. This theme, right, that runs through when we work math, when we are thinking as a mathematician. These are the ways in which we do it. And so I do have a teammate who utilizes math mindsets. I had an intern last year. So, of course, she utilizes math mindsets in her classroom this year. But outside of that, I haven't really had many opportunities to share out. But I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful that maybe that is a path that I get to take. But I do definitely think it is worth it. It just, for me, it makes it so real and attainable. It's foundational almost, if I could just put it that way. It just seems like it's such a good foundation for any math skill to be planted on top of.
It makes math fun.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes it more than just the rote procedures and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to go back to something you said, Amanda. I hear you saying every day we're talking about it in some capacity, but I also heard you say it was really important to kind of set up this norm at the beginning of the year. And, when I was looking across the literature, I saw the same thing, right? Stephen 2014, he talks about these 6 strategies for kind of setting up your classroom at the beginning of the year. And I think Jo Boaler talks about it kind of in a different way when she thinks about her mathematical mindsets, but this importance of a year 0, and I really want to emphasize that to the teachers out there listening who might want to take this up. This is something you have to be explicit about, and you have to set that up at the beginning and continue to mention it throughout the year. It also makes me think about, you talked about your students, and I love to see you talk about your students because the viewers can't see, but your face just lights up. You're so excited to talk about your students, which is so fun. And you started to talk about, some of the things that you've noticed, but what changes have you seen in your classroom since you started implementing these mindsets with your students every single day?
I think for me, what I'm noticing is kind of what we've already talked about. Math for them is fun. They're able to make connections to other things that we've already done. Math mindsets like number 7, we reason by asking, does this make sense? So just even they'll say, they actually don't do this much anymore. Is this right? When kids ask you that, is this right? Instead of like, yep, you got it right. Great job. First of all, that is a stop thinking question.
Right.
So I never answer that question with a yes or a no. It is always like, well, either what do you think or does it make sense? And so what I'm seeing is now they're using that language with each other, right? Well, does it make sense? Or, well, look, I see this pattern, or this is a strategy that I can do. What's the way that you would do it? Do you have a different way to solve it? And so what I think is it empowers them as the mathematician. I am not the keeper of all the knowledge in the room. They have the language, they have the strategies, they have the ways to think of it. It's like thinking strategies almost. If I can find the pattern, then I can figure out what the answer is. Or if I can look for a part that I know. And so they know if they are asking me specifically for help, which we'll talk later on about, kind of what my role is in that, but it comes back to them. Well, what part do you know? And so I think it's just empowering for them as mathematicians. That's what I've really noticed, is that they become less reliant on me, and it just seems like they feel more empowered.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I know. I love to hear these kinds of stories, which is what's so fun about the podcast. And I think, what's also fun for me too is I'm like reading these articles about the importance of engaging in the Standards for Math practice or in our Oklahoma practices, and it talks about all this data, right? Like this many students, and it's like those are numbers, but like what about real kids in real classrooms? And so it's fun to hear you talk about, oh, actually, this is what it looks like, and this is how it feels as the teacher. And I think what's cool too is like putting your practice with the research together is you get to say, here's the things that I'm seeing in my classroom and feeling with my students. And then I can put that with the research that says, actually, when people are engaging in the Standards for Math practice, we see, Allensworth talks about seeing improvements across the board on student test scores and grades and passing rates and focusing more on conceptual understanding. And so if you're not convinced by what Amanda's already telling you, which hopefully you are, I want to put that out there too, that this can have long-term impacts on student math understanding and math achievement, and isn't really that what we want for all students.
For sure. Absolutely. And I think for me, prior to using the math mindsets for kids, like I used to view it as what I had to be doing in the classroom, right? Teachers who are implementing the math actions and processes, this is what they are doing in the classroom. And I think that's not to go backwards in what we've already talked about, but I think that is really where I was feeling this heavy, nearly impossible load, like the check boxes. Oh my gosh, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I didn't get to everything today. How am I going to weave this in? And I just started to feel almost like that is a burden too heavy to bear, like that I have to be doing and putting all of those things into one lesson.
Yeah.
And so I really started to kind of change the lens through which I was looking at it. It's not for me, right? It's like not that I don't need these things, but as I'm teaching math, as we're teaching mathematicians, what is it that the mathematicians need? So I think once I put it out there for the kids and the kid-friendly language, that was when I really felt like, yes, this is good for kids because it's explicit and it names it for them. So for me, getting kids, equipping them with what they need to move forward in their math thinking.
Yeah.
I love the focus on the thinking part. Like so often when you talk to math teachers, it's about what strategy they're doing, what they're doing well, what procedure they're doing. And I love that you have really emphasized talking about your students as mathematicians and all the mathematical thinking that they're doing. That's just so beautiful. Okay, I have another question though. Do you have suggestions? Because I'm sure it's all been sunshine, roses, easy. This was a cakewalk to do with your students. So do hear the sarcasm in my voice for everybody listening. But what are some suggestions that you have for someone that's listening and wants to start doing something like this or something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, I'm going to talk to myself for a minute, and for any teacher who's wired like I am, maybe a bit of a perfectionist. I tend to I would label myself as not a risk taker. I'm getting better, but I think, as teachers, we want it to be planned out. I need this to happen, and then this is going to happen. And the more I lean into just changing up my classroom practices, the more I lean into it being messy, and not having it all figured out and trying something, right? Try it. What's the worst that can happen, right? Like, I don't think my kids are going home, I don't think, at night and saying, oh, Miss Bowser really bombed that lesson today. She tried something new and it was disastrous. I just don't think that's probably the conversation that's happening. Now, I'm pretty reflective and I can think, ooh, next time I'm going to do this differently, right? But that's what we want our kids to do? Like, that is the process of learning. So even for teachers, learning something new, doing something new in their classroom, I think we have to lean into that mess a little bit and know that learning is messy. And we have to remind ourselves of that. And so I think that's my first tip, is just remember that it's okay if it feels a little messy, and chaotic, and it's what we're working towards that should really drive us. Also, there's access to the posters. So even if you just start with, hey, when we're working through, you're not changing anything else in your classroom other than I'm going to put these posters on the wall. That's like a pretty good start. And then as you're noticing, oh, you know what, in this lesson, it really lends itself to visualizing because we're using models to show fractions. So, wow, I'm going to talk about that. I'm just going to mention that in our lesson that good mathematicians are going to visualize. They're going to use a model to help them reach a deeper understanding. And so I think that's a pretty easy, risk-free way to start, right? Is to take a look at the math mindsets, put them up in your classroom. Your kids are going to say, "What's this?" And then you can, go into a conversation, and that's pretty easy. The other thing is just to look through resources. Definitely ucubed.org, I think, is an amazing resource if you're wanting to kind of stretch yourself with just the idea of math mindsets in general. Those are probably my 3 easiest tips.
Are you willing to answer people if they reach out to you? And have discussion?
Absolutely. Anybody who wants to geek out about math, yeah.
Do you have a way you'd like for them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you we didn't really talk about this, but
Nope.
if you want to drop my email address
Okay,
in,
great.
I can do that.
totally fine with that. Yeah.
Thanks. We appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I want to wrap us up a little bit, and I'm wondering if you can share what's been one high of doing the math mindsets, and maybe what's one low or something that you were struggling with but maybe overcame.
Yeah, definitely the high, I think, is what I've already talked about, just seeing it empower students, and them being able to articulate, their own thinking, where I didn't feel like they could do that before because we didn't explicitly name it for them. So it gives them a spot to land, and they refer to them often. I mean, you see me looking up there, they refer to them often. And then low, that's a little more challenging. I think probably for me, and it's not really even a low, it's just maybe more of a challenge, would be the creation of what I want it to look like at the beginning of the year when I'm setting it up. Because I've tried a couple of different things, and to keep kids engaged, sometimes I'll think, oh, this is going to go great. Even we've got a math notebook, and so I made little mini posters, and we glued our mini posters in, and then we wrote our own definition of what each one of those means. And at the beginning of the year, I thought, oh, this is going to be wonderful. But then, cutting and gluing, it's like that
Right.
really kind of took away from what I intended. So it's just working out those little nuanced things and making decisions about what's really important. That's maybe more of a challenge of, you're as a teacher just making those decisions all the time about, is that really worth it?
No, I get that. And I don't know why, and if any teacher out there knows the answer to this, why does cutting and gluing take 15 times longer than I need it to? I don't know what's happening.
And it doesn't get any better the older they get.
I taught ninth graders. It takes them so long. Anyway.
I don't know. Yes.
Do you think our college students are better?
No. I don't, and it's like not on anyone. Like I watch them, they're cutting, they're gluing. It just takes long. I don't know why.
Okay, yep. we have one more question for you. That we gave you a list of 3 questions. You got to pick out the one that you wanted from it. This is something we're going to ask all of our guests. The one you chose was, what advice would you give to your first year self?
Golly, so I'm 21 years in. So when I think back to my first year self, I remember vividly my first year self. Okay. And it's just funny looking back because it wasn't pretty, I mean, it's just like, and I didn't know any better then. And my students, even, I'll tell you a super quick story. Our teacher of the year for last year came out, they give us the whole list. And I was looking through the list of all the different schools, and a student from my first year of teaching was his sites teacher of the year.
Aww.
How precious is this?
Amazing.
Okay, so I had to reach out and I had to say, congratulations, I'm so proud of you. And he wrote me back and he said, Miss Bowser, your class is still to this day one of my favorite classes as a first year teacher. So
goodness.
I can sit and say, gosh, oh my, those poor kids, I didn't know what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. But when you enter a classroom excited and you have passion, that honestly, it's the most important thing. And so I think I would just remind myself that, experience is the best teacher, and you can't get that until you go through that mess. You've got to put yourself through the mess to get the experience, to figure out what you want to do differently, what works. And it's going to be kind of messy. So I think I would just remind myself, experience is coming. This is what you've got to walk through this. Don't be afraid to take risk. Try something new. You're not going to have it all figured out. It's okay. And I think I would tell myself maybe to relax a little bit too. So even to this day, I might tell myself that, it's okay, relax. It's all going to be okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being our first teacher on the podcast. We're so excited. And we're excited because we're going to have you back for another episode.
She's going to be back in a couple episodes, so check her out again later.
That's right. So
awesome. Right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys, everybody, for spending time with us today. We would love for you to be part of our conversation. Check out the goodies that Amanda left in the show notes and leave thoughts, comments, additional insights, etc. in the sections below. Also, remember to use the link in the description to suggest a teacher that needs the microphone because they are doing something awesome that needs to be shared with others. We can't wait to share the next episode with you.